Not that good, huh?
So Jay, we cannot hear you either method.
Gonna make it a quicker meeting.
Can you do sign language?
Jay, can you unmute yourself?
I see him twice too.
Matt, you have to run over there and help. Stand in the doorway. All right, I see that Pam has us live streaming on YouTube right now, so hopefully we'll get Jay's audio fixed by the time his manager report comes up.
Can you do sign language?
Are you ready to go, Pam?
Yep, we're all set.
I see him twice too.
Thank you for your help. You have to run over there and help. Stand in the doorway. Okay, I'm going to call the Ways and Means meeting to order for April 1st, 2020. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes. Shelley, would you move that for me, please?
Yes, I will move that.
Thank you. Andrew, would you second?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That is carried. All right, we're going to move on to the Assistant County Manager's presentation for the 2020 budget amendment for STEP DWI. Before I call on Matt, I would like a motion to move this.
I'll move it.
Thank you, John. And a second, please.
Second,
Thank you, Shelley. Okay, Matt, would you like to explain your resolution, please?
Yes, this budget amendment was done in 2019, but the city police department forgot to send an invoice over. So we agreed to this. The Governor's Traffic Safety Council agreed to this. We were using reserve funds from STOP DWI for this pedal car to help with demonstrations that the city police would put on, and that would be accessible from the sheriff's office as well, and the Leroy police if they wanted it. They've since sent us an invoice this year. So the money that we had budgeted last year just fell back to the reserve. So the money is there to do it, and it's no big deal for us to go ahead and pay for it since we committed to helping and pay for it.
All right, any comments or questions for Matt regarding this resolution?
I would make a motion for approval.
That was a question I didn't hear.
No, it's fine. There was no question. It was a motion, but we already did that. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Is Jay available?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Jay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Good. Okay, so first thing is obviously the resolution with the Legal Aid Society to rent space from us out in County Building 2 in what used to be the DSS reception area. And you have a resolution in front of you to continue that arrangement.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for the lease for Jay's item?
I would move that.
Thank you, Shelley. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. Comments or questions to Jay?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I know I bring this up every darn time. Why are we in the leasing business to outside agencies?
These people are actually providing a direct service to some of our clients. And that's the rationale for doing that. They used to be located in the Office of the Aging at one time. But again, in terms of where they are and space-wise, they're a better fit in the one small office that's right there off the main lobby. And that's really all that we've ever looked at. But they actually do have direct service to clients and people that we deal with on a regular basis in a couple of our departments.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Jay, understanding that a lot of our workforce is working from home now, are these folks working from home? Are they following the same directives that the rest?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, they are not in the building because again, they're a private sector entity and our buildings are closed to the outside. And the only way they deal with people is on a face-to-face basis. But I have not been to County Building 2 lately. But I would presume that based on the protocols as far as the state of New York is concerned, that there is no one there and they are not presenting a problem for us. Nobody has told us from County Building 2 that there is a presence in that building that shouldn't be, which they probably would stand out in that regard.
My next question is, with our lower utilization of our buildings, are we doing anything to impact our utility usage in all of our buildings at the same time? I know that we have a great opportunity with our controls that we've just put into place. And I was just wondering if there was some type of information you
That
could.
is one of the things we've asked, particularly facilities / cleaning, where the utility bills are mostly concentrated, to give us some idea of what we're seeing in terms of usage about this same time last year, but also any change that they're going to be seeing with regard to our operating expenses in, so to speak, basically having the building somewhat mothballed and or almost vacant compared to what we normally see at this time of year. That's still a work in progress, as you know, with the exception of, I guess, really people going in and doing payroll and things like at 2 Bank Street, Office of the Aging, on a daily basis, there's only 1 or 2 staff people in the entire building. Same thing with County Building 1. Exception, I think we let you know that as of today, 2 or 3 of the county clerk staff are working in the auto bureau with regard to dealer work and mail that's been set aside and sitting for 3 days or more. As well as the Dropbox information, so that they can keep some semblance of local presence as far as the DMV is concerned. I saw Michael at noon today, and he said so far it's going okay, and it's going to be day to day.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair, I have a
Jay.
question.
Go ahead, Gary.
Jay, the rate here, that 22 something, that's a pretty good rate for a year. I said, well,
Gary, I can't hear. I couldn't understand a word you said.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but your volume and everything is broken up, Gary.
Is that any
I'll
better?
jump in
Something here
here.
in this part of the building.
Jay, he was questioning the rate as being the amount for the whole year. It seems kind of low.
It is because they're a nonprofit. And again, we didn't look at this as a quote unquote revenue opportunity, but it is certainly subject to change. If you wish us to make a counter offer to them on as far as this renewal is concerned, it'll be a decision of theirs whether or not they stay in the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Jay?
I have another one. Is it even legal for us to give this outside agency a below market rate rental on our property?
Andrew, I have no idea what you said. I'm sorry.
I'll jump in. He wanted to know the legality of offering a below market rate rental to an agency like that.
It is literally a decision of the policymakers of County of Genesee. It has nothing to do, we are not held to any responsible or any outside criteria or guidelines as far as what we're renting our space for.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me that we can't throw away an old office chair that's useless without a resolution. And because we're not supposed to be giving, as a government entity, anybody any fair breaks, but we can, I can't believe there's no legality to that at all.
I'd have to defer to Kevin Earl on that. There is nothing in the way that we rent other space from people or people rent space to us that has come up.
Thank you. Okay. We'll have to see where we are with this when we vote. Is there anybody that wants to table and get more information as far as a higher rate, or are we ready to vote on this?
I don't need to table it, but I'm not going to support it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to call the vote if there are no more comments or questions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
John Hilchi, what do you vote?
Aye.
All right, then I'm going to vote aye, so we're going to move that forward. Thank you.
Mary Ann, Chair, could we ask that this does get looked at? Because I believe that there's a 30 or 60-day out clause to this, but at least it keeps the activity in the building for this time period.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you do that for us, Jay? Maybe
Absolutely.
look into that. Let's keep in mind that every entity right now is probably in crisis mode, and since this is an organization that serves those in need, I think we better, you know, I'm more apt to be very cautious about, you know, hitting them when they're down. But I understand where everybody's coming from.
And like I said, to the best of my knowledge, there is nobody out there who is a non-county employee, including ORPS, as well as these people that, to the best of my knowledge, are not coming into the building on a daily basis, but we will confirm that.
All right, thank you. Jay, let's move into your county manager's report part of this. I
Okay.
know we're all anxious to kind of hear what is actually going on. I know it's changing hour by hour. So go ahead and
Well,
fill us
and
in.
it's, sure, and it's literally probably even more frequent than that right now, particularly with the state budget. As you saw, I think you all saw the note that came from NISAC with regard to the switch, ARU, that the governor, I believe, has pulled with regard to, instead of going at our Medicaid, you know, cap being taken away and the 3% and above local county shares increasing, he's come up with a newfangled way of having us start funding deficits with regard to general hospitals and nursing homes. Not sure where that came from. My only sense is that what he's done is he and his advisors have figured out a way that, as the governor, as the state of the, excuse me, the federal government has indicated, that if the state of New York does not wish to receive the 5.26 billion and the 6.7 billion that was to come to counties under the EFMAP program, this is a way for him to say that we are not screwing with the county, so to speak, as far as Medicaid is concerned. Therefore, his proposal still has viability in the way that he presented his budget and his 30-day amendments as far as the county shares of Medicaid. But again, this is a backdoor way potentially of putting us in a $250 million tranche on a statewide basis as far as two fiscal entities and obviously vital services that we have no control over, no involvement in, no veto or anything else. Of course, we haven't seen any of the details, but this one is both scary as well as quite off the beaten trail as to a way for the governor and his two colleagues potentially in the Senate and Assembly coming up with another way to try to balance the state budget, but giving us another burden that up until this afternoon was not on our radar screen. Be that as it may, as we know at this present time, there is still no state budget for 2020-2021. So there's a lot of details that we don't have even the ability to go in and start looking at, you know, what the impact is in our operating budgets. Obviously, because we've already been on the 50% at home or working at home margin and looking at working with, you know, our department and all the other departments of county government, and even further dive should we be in the process of dealing with actual COVID-19 exposure and even further reduced workforce. We have a secondary plan and all the departments have given us their information and insight as to how they might continue some semblance of operations, but even on a more reduced scale. That still does not get us in terms of clarity what is or is not going to be available as far as the federal funding is concerned, because there was funding in there in terms of paid leave and other things of that nature, which we're still trying to sort out and go through. Obviously, we know that in our current 2020 budget, we have approximately $1.3 million in outside agency funding, not including the community college, but 460,000 of that is the PPA / Chamber of Commerce Tourism Program, which is technically all funded 100% by revenue. So in net cost, it's about 864,000 that actually has county funding to those outside agencies. And you know the list, including the largest funded entity that we have there aside from tourism promotion, which is Cooperative Extension, and then dealing with all the others therein, including obviously also GCEDC, as well as the public libraries, museum, the Arts Council, and Finger Lakes Regional Planning. So that's just one of the other perspectives. If we have to start ratcheting down, because this is going to be the devastation to our budget, both either in terms of new state aid reductions in various programs, including some of our mandated programs, and then what happens to what the rest of our county budget looks like if we see some of the, you've seen the wide ranging potential damage to sales tax in the state, but also in this county of somewhere between 1.8 and 5.6 million. Again, that was almost a week or 2 weeks ago's estimates. You know, now they've doubled that number at the state level from $1 billion to $2 billion in terms of potential sales tax loss. Obviously, at that point, NISAC was not able to put a new estimate together. So, you know, right now, even those first figures are, I guess, what I would call conservative. I believe Scott shared with you where we are position-wise in terms of our 1% reserve in our general fund reserve. So Scott, if you want to talk to any of that in terms of what you've got sitting there, as far as building and equipment reserve, road and bridge reserve, balance of infrastructure reserve, which obviously was, you know, earmarked initially for the jail, which right now is on hold. And then the actual 1% sales tax reserve, which is that $1.1 million, and that's it. Correct, Scott?
Yeah, that's it. That's what we have in our reserves.
Correct. So they all have the profile you put together that says technically we have $14,770,000. You know, as far as what the legislature may or may not wish to deal with, you know, as we start getting more details, hopefully within the next week or so, as to what this federal budget's going to do, but even more critically, what the state budget is going to be doing for us, as far as other changes in revenue.
All right, thank you, Jay. Any questions for Jay?
I'm sorry, Marianne, one other thing, because I know that it was very specific conversation, or at least the consideration question was, and I believe Tim is on the line here, was with regard to the airport pole barn, and whether or not that's something that, you know, we need to continue to go ahead with. I believe it's funded right now by the county to the tune of approximately $125,000. And so if you wish to have either more discussion on that, or if Tim needs to provide you with more insight, he's here on the line and he can chime in.
Just for a clarification, that's already been approved and gone out to bid, and it's initially in the pre-start phase. We're ready to go, right?
That is correct.
And then there was some question as to whether, due to the fiscal constraints we know we're going to be under, whether it's prudent to go ahead with that as planned or put it off. So Tim, would you speak to that? Because you made a pretty strong case as to why we need to continue with that, but I'd like you to share it with the others.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, did you share my email, Jay, with everyone this morning that I sent to you?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, in a nutshell, we have the fuel equipment at the airport that we normally have kept indoors. Historically, we've kept it either in empty hangars, or in the old terminal building. The old hangar had a garage attached to it that we kept it in to keep it from freezing up in the wintertime. And we did try storing it outside for a while after we built the new building, since there's no space in it in the new hangar for that. And we did put I'm not sure what he's doing. We did put the an electric service outside in order to plug the trucks into in the attempt of using block heaters to keep them from freezing up in the wintertime. But just with the level of wind that we get out there, the engines would start, but the fuel lines on the actual delivery truck, the delivery end of the truck, would freeze up. So that didn't work either. Lately, we've been storing them in the old blue hangars, the 55, 60-year-old blue hangars that are out closer to the runway. Those are actually scheduled to be torn down later this summer under federal aid because they're still considered obstructions to the runway. So we're not going to have a place to store the trucks inside. So we had the two options that I've been looking at is we could replace the existing pole barn on the airport that is a 70-year-old wooden pole barn. It's in really, really rough shape. We have been storing small equipment in there for years. When we had a smaller tractor at the airport doing our mowing, we used to store that in there as well. But the new equipment that we have for mowing doesn't fit in there. The fuel trucks don't fit in there. And the thought process was we could replace that facility, which is in need of replacement anyway, make it a slightly bigger building, and then we would have the place to store the fuel trucks inside, put our mowing equipment back out there for the winter, and then still have place for the facilities crew to store their stuff from downtown that has no home. And as well, one of the things that would be a nice benefit is that we could store the grader at the airport as well. Right now, we operate the grader in the winter. It's basically the piece of equipment that clears the airport. And we drive it basically back and forth from Cedar Street out to the airport every time there's a snow event. So it's a fairly cumbersome piece of equipment to take through town. Usually we have a truck mounted blower that we use, that we connect to the front end of the grader. And it would be operationally a lot easier to keep it at the airport. So if we were to create this larger building, we'd have a place to store that indoors as well. So that was kind of my option A. I completely understand the fiscal, constraints we're looking at. I think we're going to be in obviously pretty dire shape. So my option B would be to store the fuel vehicles probably in one of the hangars, of the new hangars that we're going to be building this summer under our state grant. That obviously would take up a hangar bay that we would normally collect rent on from a private aircraft. And even possibly we could even just construct a garage bay as part of that facility, which would probably take away two bays for aircraft, which I would really rather not have done. But there, I completely understand where we're at financially. Again, the option is there to store it in a facility. It might be a building code issue, since it would be a mixed use aviation / what they call S2 storage for vehicles. Combining those two might require some fire code, either a firewall or possibly sprinklers, which would increase the cost of that project. And I know that's already a fairly tightly budgeted project as well. So that's just kind of the background behind it. It's really about protecting the fuel trucks and making sure that we can use those through the winter and continue operating at the airport.
Okay, thank you. What is your preference, Tim?
My preference would be to move ahead with the storage building. I know it is $125,000 of county aid. Option B probably would be again, storing the facilities, storing the trucks in the hangar, but that's going to probably cost us extra money as well. And anything above and beyond what we already have in the project would be local share. So I don't know if we went option B, I don't know that we'd have you really wouldn't be saving a true 125,000. Maybe you're saving half of that, depending on the impact on the construction type of the building and the possible need for sprinklers and potentially even unknown bid results in terms of bidders. So I would recommend sticking with option A. I know it's money that we're going to desperately need, but I did work with Jay already and submitted a list. I think you've all seen where we've pulled back on almost all the other capital projects that weren't in progress, or they were already in a place where we could back out of. We had a few existing projects that we had not yet worked on, and we've also closed those out. So we've already cut, I think, $600,000 out of the capital budget for 2020. And we've already planned ahead into 2021 and deferred, I think, another $800,000 in projects. So I know this is, again, dire times in terms of money, but operationally, I think for us right now, it makes a lot of sense to keep moving forward on this one project.
And we don't know if we were to use your plan B, what ultimately that's costing us. And
we
how
wouldn't
find it out. It would
You
take a
won't know
while.
until we've completed the design of the building, which we just started on. I'd have to have our engineers run through that design, give me an estimate on what they think it would add to the cost. So it would take a little bit of time to get to that point, probably 2 or 3 months.
Okay, thank you. I'd like Jay to weigh in on this. What's the county manager's recommendation as far as this proposal goes?
Well, and I think as Tim indicated, where we are in stature wise and with the equipment, I think it would be preferable to do his option A, get it done. And with the other changes he's made in his capital project and even projects and his asset acquisitions with regard to what's already in the current budget, I think this is the best way forward at the moment.
Thank you, Jay. Scott, I'd like to have the viewpoint of the treasurer's office on this as well. Is Scott still here?
In there, I will delegate that out to the legislature to make that decision.
What percentage of the price of this is coming out of that 1% aside from the jail and the roads and bridges fund? What do we have about? Little under 2 million, or I don't have the chart in front of me because I'm on
I
this.
don't understand your question.
What is the 1% reserves that we got?
It's
that
sitting
chart?
at $1.1 million, Marianne.
Okay, so this is a sizable chunk of that.
Well, that's already been taken out. The 125,000 is out of that figure.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
that's
'Cause
already
that was
gone. That's-
already
Oh, all
adopted
right.
in February.
Okay, all right, well, that's important to know, thank you. All right, so let's open this up for comments, and people on the Public Service Committee as well. I know that this already went through that committee, but we're looking at adjustments from things that we've already approved. So I'd like some thoughts before we give direction here.
If I may, Mary Ann?
Yeah, go ahead, Shelley.
So Tim, we've always talked about the airport as being able to hold its own as far as its expenses go through the sale of the aviation fuel. So is there a mechanism that you would think that you could maybe provide a model when this might be able to repay or at least pay for itself at some point in the future?
I guess I would say it'd probably be difficult to say we could cover the cost of this, just because we do use any surplus we generate now to cover the debt service for the terminal and the main hangar, which I believe that's about a $300,000 a year payment. And I know Scott's been using our reserves up, and we don't even fully cover the debt service on the hangar right now. So we would have to generate probably another $150,000 a year in surplus, which would, that would double what we make in our best years right now. So it would be very difficult for the airport to pay this back directly on surplus it generates. We definitely cover our operating costs for sure, and we're generating surplus, but that surplus is basically completely used to cover as much of the debt service for the hangar and terminal that we can.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mary Ann, I have one. Tim, you open the bids on that building?
Yep, the bids have been open. We had, I think there was 6 bidders. Thompson Builds was the lowest bidder at 109,000, which, is pretty favorable bidding. We have not yet taken them to committee to award. That was something I was planning on doing in April.
Does that include the concrete floor and electrical, the whole works?
No, that is just the cost of the structure, the skin, the basic frame of the shell of the building. We were planning on doing the concrete floor and any electrical work inside using county forces.
Thank you.
Marianne.
Gary, go ahead.
I got bounced off for a few seconds, so I didn't hear a lot of the comments, but I explained my position to Tim earlier. I think he justified the building. I think it's needed, but I don't think this is the time to spend that kind of money. We don't know where we're going to be when this whole thing is said and done. If we put a stop on a jail is needed. We put a stop on that. I think we need to put a stop on all capital projects until we know where we are budget-wise.
Thank you, Gary. Anyone want to offer any support on either position?
I have another question for Tim, if I can.
Go ahead, Christian.
Tim, just curious why parking equipment in a hangar all of a sudden requires sprinkler systems, firewalls, et cetera. And what type of revenue are we giving up if we're not renting it out to, another private individual? How does that, I'm just curious why for a year or two we couldn't utilize a building we're putting up anyway.
Well, we definitely could, and that's why I considered it as an option for us. We generate approximately $300 per month per hangar unit that we rent. So if we were just to store the 2 fuel trucks inside, we would only take up one bay. I think if we were to, try to be more creative and include a garage into that hangar, we'd probably take up two bays and turn it into a garage. So instead of an 8-bay hangar, you'd have a 6-bay hangar. That would give you enough space to put the grader and other things in it that we would put in a pole barn. Back to your question on relative to the sprinklers, aircraft storage is different than vehicle storage in the building code. So I don't have a 100% solid answer on what it would require, whether it's just a firewall or sprinklers, but that's definitely something you'd have to look into.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? In my opinion, I don't think we really have enough information here to really make a determination. I kind of support what Christian's saying. If we're building a hangar, why couldn't we put some trucks in there? We really don't know what the building code's going to come back and say about that. So I think until we know the comparisons cost-wise, I don't think I can make a decision on that today. So I really think we need to go back and look at this. It's really hard to say no when we know we need this, but I right now I agree it's a lot of money that we may not have to spend. So that's my opinion. So I would let the other members of Ways and Means kind of voice their opinion at this time, please.
Can we table it?
It's really not on the agenda. This is something that's already gone through, and now we're giving direction on whether we want to put a hold on it.
Understood.
What do you think, Andy? Do you have an opinion on that right now?
Yeah, I don't like where we are in the project in terms of putting the brakes on it. I get that, but I guess I don't feel comfortable supporting it in terms of the position we're in financially, which we have no clue where we are financially at this point.
Okay, thank you. Shelley, your thoughts?
So I am uncomfortable stopping this, but I also recognize the fact that we don't know where we are. New York is on pause. We need to follow suit. And right now, the construction industry has been deemed non-essential. So it's not going to more than likely get completed this year anyway. And so at this point, I think we put it on hold until we have further information as to what our situation looks like.
Thank you. And how about you, John Hilchey?
Yeah, Tim, is there a time frame on that bid? Has it got to be completed or let in a certain amount of days? Is that bid price only good for so long?
The bid prices are usually good for 45 days. I was going to speak up earlier. We have obviously a few weeks before we put our public service back up in. I was going to do some more research on the code to see what the impact is on option B. And I can definitely put together kind of a package recommendation in terms of, whether we reject or award the bid, and give us some more detail to answer the question on option B.
I think that would be very helpful. I'd like to see that come to public service if the chair agrees. It sounds like we have a consensus here that we're not ready to go forward with this, given the cost and where we are financially, and not knowing where we are financially at this point. We know it's not going to be good.
Yes, I'm in favor on putting it on hold. It's only early April and it doesn't take long to throw up a pole barn. And I don't think there's any harm in holding off on it.
Okay, thank you, John. Any other comments at this time on that? All right, thank you, Tim. So Jay, is that clear where we are with that right now?
Yes, it is. Yes,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Jay. Okay, thank you. We hate to do it, but what do we just don't know.
We are in strange and unusual times, and we need to conserve whatever we've got financially until we see what other things happen over the next couple of weeks, if not longer than that.
Is
Like
there
you said,
any,
unless Scott gets that printing machine going and he just turns out those 20s like ad nauseum.
Is there any other place in the county that could store those fuel trucks for us that we could partner with someone or pay rent to, or so we don't leave our equipment out in the weather?
Well, we use
That'd
it.
be something. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, we use it on a daily basis at the airport. You know, they're constantly fueling aircraft with it, so we have to have it stored close to the terminal, close to the hangar, so we can fuel planes. So there's really no other place other than the airport where we can store it, because it's not actually the fuel trucks aren't even licensed to be on the road. They're stuck at the airport. So
Okay, thank you.
I did, one other option is if we we get to public service and we definitely want to put this on hold, we could reach out to the contractors and see if the contractors are willing to put their bids on hold rather than rejecting them wholesale. We could, say, hey, would you hold your bids for another 90 days or 45 days or something like that? And have that kind of as another option, another arrow in our quiver per se. But I could reach out to them as well on that if that's something you're interested in.
What do you think about that, the Chair of Public Service, John?
It wouldn't hurt to ask them if we could do it. If we have to rebid, we bid. Maybe the prices be more favorable later. I have 6 of one and half dozen the other.
I would look into that, Tim, and just have it ready to go to public service anyway. It's not,
Okay.
it doesn't hurt to ask.
At least as a
Marianne, I do have
continued
one
discussion,
quick
correct, Madam Chairman?
Pardon me? I didn't hear your question, Jay.
Just as long, again, with the idea that there at least be some continued discussion and or information brought forward, if any of it looks like it's going to be something that you'd want to further consider.
Right, I'm gonna refer this back, to public service, and then we'll let them take it from there.
Gotcha.
Okay, we're gonna move on. If there is not any other comment regarding this issue, Pam, do you have your? Go ahead, Pam.
Continued discussion
The
and or
next meeting of the
information
Ways and
brought
Means
forward, if any
Committee
of it
is
looks like
Wednesday,
it
April
might be
15th.
something that you'd want to further consider.
Thank you, Pam, and thanks for all your help with setting up the meeting today. You've been great.
Marianne, I did have one other question of Tim, real quick.
Go ahead.
Tim, are there airports you know of that store their fuel vehicles outside and they don't have them inside?
I was going to reach out actually through our listserv statewide and find out after your question this morning. I know you gave me that advisory circular that kind of had a reference to not storing vehicles inside, which was part of a sample plan that they put together. But I was going to reach out to the other counties that I know that operate airports and ask that question, and I'll definitely have that answer for you at public service.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Marianne, we have a referral, right?
Pardon me, Andrew?
We have a referral from public service or human service.
Did we not do that?
I missed it, but I did get pushed off at one point.
Right, I don't believe we got to that. The department, the health department, correct?
Right, and mental health.
All right, yes, let's do
Yes,
this.
DSS and health, excuse me.
So this is a contract for laboratory services. I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thank you, Andrew. Can I have a second?
Second,
Comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, I think that about wraps it up. We all saw NICEAG's alert to us to contact our state and representatives and the heads of the budget committees in the state legislature. So I would encourage the citizens out there who are listening and the legislature as well to contact their representative and oppose the governor's proposal to start a mandatory fund to counties to support hospitals and nursing homes. This would be a new mandate, people, that would cost us a lot of money. And when we talk about mandates, we're just talking about requirements that the governor and the state want to put on municipalities that gets directly passed down to the taxpayer. So it's important for us to recognize what's going on and to have our voices be heard. Is there any other business or discussion to come before the committee?
Understand,
Shelley?
Mary Ann, too, that even what this looks like is just the tip of the iceberg. If the state gets to go down this road, we could be in a world of hurt that we haven't even seen from the days even when we owned the nursing home and we're financing deficits. Because now you're talking general hospitals and nursing homes. And certainly nursing homes have been running, private and public, on close margins, if not deficits, like our facility used to be. So this really can throw the entire nature of how counties are funding, these, so to speak, $250 million gaps, in things we have no control over and absolutely no input on. And I would bet that that's not part of the state legislation if this gets in the budget, as far as us becoming involved in those two operational budgets. Again, that's why we sold the county nursing home. And obviously, does UMMC and RGH want us to start, so to speak, getting inside their heads and getting inside their budgets? I seriously doubt it.
Thank you. Shelley, you had your hand up. Would you like to say something?
I'm not sure if you can, oh, there we go. Maybe you can hear me now. My concern is that until we know what the budget has in store for us with these just astronomical costs that are coming forward, is there a way that we can put our local initiatives on pause until we know more of what we know? So Jay, the conversations that we've had in regards to those outside agencies and to our other agreements that we have an opportunity to pull back that are not contracts per se, could we take a look at those and start having those discussions? Because until we know what we know, we really cannot handicap the fact that we are mandated to deliver services, whether or not the state provides funding for them. And that puts us in a very precarious position without knowing what resources are going to be tapped out by the state.
Start, and obviously we'd like to think there'll be at least some clarity as to how much more damage we suffer by virtue of this budget that will probably be adopted at the state level by midnight tonight. And then the details coming out from there as to where we also, need to also talk to some of those outside agencies who themselves may be taking cuts and or being devastated. So there's a lot of moving parts right now, but yes, that's part of what we're looking at, and we'll start looking at more detail once we know at least this point what the state budget's going to do to all of us. Then we start looking at how the federal budget and these COVID fundings and these now 3 iterations of federal stimulus does or does not help anybody, or basically leaves us also taking another hit.
Also, if Scott, if you could keep us updated on what the revenue is doing as far as sales tax goes, because that is another key piece of information that we have. We appreciate that update that you do on a regular basis, because that's
Kevin, Scott, you got a real handle on that, correct?
Yeah, currently we are currently up on sales tax. We have 2 more payments to get this month, and then that'll be the end of the first quarter. And then I'll be sending you an email to where we actually ended up for the first quarter. And then after that period of time, you're going to want to have a discussion on what we may or may not want to do with payments to other municipalities for the second quarter.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Is that what you wanted? Anything else, Shelley, with regarding that issue?
To the entire group here, I think there are so many unknowns facing us right now that the county has to provide for those mandated services. And we continue to look at what we can do to preserve our resources. And I know that in 2 calls with our partners, the towns, the village, and the city, we've asked them to do exactly the same thing. It is scary times. It is unprecedented times. We're going to work together to get through this, but there is going to be some shared burden that all of us will have. And nobody is going to like it or appreciate it, but together we're going to get through it.
I don't think we have any other choice but to work together and try to weather this storm that we're in. Metaphorically, that is. All right, if there isn't anything else, I will take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you,
Second.
Shelley, and a second from Andrew. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all for participating and stay safe. Take care.
Thank you, folks.
I would just like to offer, as far as the public health department, if folks have to go